On the Autocar show today, the Royal Enfield Himalayan takes on the Mahindra Mojo and the Royal Enfield Thunderbird 500. We drive the mammoth Mercedes GLS. And there's Autocar Confidential with Hormazd Sorabji.
Now when I rode Royal Enfield's Himalayan up in Shimla, I went quite a bit gaga about the motorcycle. And since then I've just been thinking, did I miss out anything? Is it really that good? And so we've really been looking forward to getting the Himalayan on our home turf to see just how good it really is. And once we got it, we had to test it and of course pitch it against some other motorcycles. The most notable one here of course is that Mahindra's Mojo, the other modern tourer that's on sale in India today. And the motorcycle out back there is Royal Enfield's Thunderbird 500, which we feel is a popular pick for people who want to go wandering across the immense country that India is. And that will be the yardstick that the Himalayan is pitched against to see just how much of a step forward it is from Royal Enfield. And to see what's what, we decided to ditch our usual ride routes and headed down to the Konkan coast. Sitting there on the beach, it's quite apparent that all three motorcycles here are quite different. The Himalayan, with its tall stance, 220mm of ground clearance, its long travel suspension, the exposed and ultra-rugged chassis and minimalist design makes it quite clear that it is designed to go far and is ready to take a beating along the way. The Mahindra Mojo's design hints at a more sporty character. It has a bikini fairing, upside-down forks and sporty rubber from Pirelli. Finally, we have the Thunderbird. This Royal Enfield has a low and swoopy stance, like any good cruiser should. And in keeping with its classical looks, the hardware is a bit retro too, like a simple single downtube chassis and twin shock absorbers at the rear. And the dissimilarities go deeper than that. Now these three motorcycles, quite different, and you can see that in terms of the engine design. The Mahindra Mojo comes with a liquid-cooled, fuel-injected engine with dual overhead cams and a 4-valve head. The Royal Enfield Himalayan comes with a simple 2-valve head, is air and oil-cooled and is only carbureted for now. And here we have the Thunderbird 500, which is only air-cooled and, well, does get fuel injection. But what difference does this make once they're out on the road? Let's find out. Which is the most exciting motor here? Well, that's quite simple. It's Mahindra's Mojo. With 27 horsepower, a 4-valve head and a 6-speed gearbox, this is one quick motorcycle and it loves to rev. Which means in terms of acceleration, it is the quickest and it also has the highest top speed. What makes it even nicer to ride is that the clutch action is light and the gear shifts are precise and slick. The Himalayan seems a bit disappointing in comparison. Its gearbox feels a bit notchy and the clutch is heavy. And despite having more displacement than the Mojo, it has less horsepower, only 24.8. But its 32 Nm of torque is more than the Mahindra and is made earlier in the rev range as well. While it isn't the quickest, it has adequate performance and the usability of power and torque helps it stand out.
whether overtaking or just ambling around at low speeds. The Himalayan does it with a simple fluidity. Cruising on the highway at speeds between 80 to 110 kph is thoroughly enjoyable. The big daddy here is the Thunderbird 500. The UCE motor is a simple, air-cooled, pushrod equipped 2-valve design. But thanks to the extra displacement, it delivers the most power and torque, 27.6 horsepower and 41 Newton meters, which is a whole bucket load more than the others. At a true top speed of 133 kph, it is faster than the Himalayan. But sustaining those speeds for long will be extremely tiresome, as the vibrations get incredibly annoying. Instead, the Thunderbird prefers to be ridden at a leisurely pace. Keep the needle under 3000 RPM and it feels super sweet, with the thump keeping you company.
Ride these two back to back and it's amply clear that the Himalayan is a couple of generations ahead when it comes to the engine, because it just feels smoother, it has better cruising ability. So it's traded up a bit of that old Royal Enfield character for usability, and I'd be happy to live with that trade-off. On the other hand, you have Mojo, which has a lot of performance on offer. Clearly the smoothest motor, the quickest motor, the most responsive one as well. But is it the best for touring? I don't quite think so, because the gearing feels quite short, and even when you're sitting at 80, 90, 100 kilometers an hour in that range, it just doesn't quite feel at ease. It's always eager to go faster, and that's not quite what you want when you're in the mood for touring. And that's where the Himalayan really hits that sweet spot and lets you sit back, enjoy the ride, even though it's not going to go much faster.
So that's on straight roads. But what about when things get winding? The Mojo has the most promising hardware. It's got upside down forks, a monoshock at the rear, 17-inch wheels wrapped with Pirelli's Diablo Rosso 2 rubber, and there's a 320mm pedal disc at the front and a 240mm disc at the rear. The ingredients are mouth-watering. But sadly, the final result is far from lip-smacking. In this company, the Mojo just didn't feel as confidence-inspiring. The chassis is the weak point. The Mojo feels heavy to steer at low speeds, and as the pace increases, it bucks and weaves. And not just in corners, even in a straight line. And when you toss it into a corner, it runs out of clearance all too soon. The front brake has plenty of bite, but it feels squishy. Meanwhile, the rear brake is too sharp and easy to lock up. And when you combine all of this, the Mojo ends up feeling tiring and a bit worrying to steer. The Thunderbird, with its old-school components, springs a nice surprise. It feels refreshingly light and precise to steer. The feelsome front brake made it more confidence-inspiring to use as well. And though it has the shortest wheelbase, it was quite steady at highway speeds and fairly agile in corners as well. The Himalayan makes no bones about it. It's supposed to perform well off-road. So with its on-off-road tires, you wouldn't expect it to be a great handler on-road. But the Himalayan proves that wrong. The Seat Grip XL on the Himalayan provide lots of grip. And the Himalayan is very willing to drop into corners and can carry massively in angles as well. Its only one and serious weak point is the front brake. It's just very vague in terms of feel, and you need to use a lot of effort at the lever to get the full braking power.
What makes the Himalayan all the more enjoyable as a tourer is the way it steers. It's got an incredible sense of stability, yet at the same time it'll flow smartly through a set of winding roads, and along with that, it also has this one thing extra, and that's its off-road ability.
Right, now all three vehicles here can take on dusty and bumpy roads. But while two of them will tread with care, the Himalayan will look for wilder stuff. Although, you should remove the main stand if you need the full 220mm of ground clearance. The suspension soaks up harshness incredibly well, and when you combine it with the power and torque on tap, you can go further than imagined. This is a pretty serious motorcycle to go wandering into the wild with.
Being on the road or off it, that's the fun stuff. But we've got to talk about the practical stuff as well, whether you're planning to hit the highway or whether you're stuck in the city. So how do these three fare?
Well, first and foremost, when it comes to covering long distances, the Himalayan is the best. Its seating posture, seat, and suspension setup make it quite tireless. It is also the most comfortable to tackle city streets with, as the suspension can really soak up bumps at low speed, and it is capable of making U-turns just about anywhere. Build quality is good, and overall the machine performed very well. The only hiccup, the bolts of the sari guard came loose and it fell off. The Thunderbird can tackle the city quite well, but its short travel suspension can get a bit lumpy, and you do feel that even on the highway, especially over broken surfaces. One advantage that the Thunderbird has for touring is its 20-litre fuel tank, but the Mojo does even better with a 21-litre fuel tank. But on other fronts, the Mojo isn't quite as impressive. Its stance is a strange mix of commuter, like the footpeg position, while the handlebar is set on the sportier side. And while the suspension feels adequate at times, it can feel harsh at others. And the seat isn't the most comfortable either. When it comes to fuel efficiency, the Himalayan is the most efficient in the city, with the Thunderbird following close behind, and the Mojo comes in third. Out on the highway, the Himalayan leads the way, and the Mahindra follows closely, with the Thunderbird following in after. All three motorcycles are priced within 25,000 rupees of each other. The Himalayan is the cheapest of the three, while the Thunderbird is the most expensive.
On our ride down, we got a lot of clarity. Royal Enfield's Thunderbird, it shouldn't be worried by the Himalayan, it should be thankful, because now it has the room and space to be itself, which is this easy-going cruiser, not an all-out tourer. Mahindra's Mojo is really trying to fit the bill of a tourer, but it isn't. The engine isn't relaxed enough, and the overall ride quality needs to be more pliant for that as well. You could argue that it is a sports tourer, but for that, it would need a stronger chassis and far better handling. Which leaves us with Royal Enfield's Himalayan. Well, we were quite impressed with it earlier, and now after this ride, I have to admit, I'm surprised. I like it even more. Yes, it has its shortcomings, the gearbox is feeling notchy, and the engine, the noise from it is just annoying. And of course, we could have done with more power. But on the whole, if we want to head out onto the highway, wander, explore, have a blast, I think Royal Enfield's Himalayan is the one that ticks the box.
After this break, the upgraded Mercedes GLS.
Well, I'm just finishing up a lot of work on the way to a shoot, and if you're like me and tend to get a lot of work done on your daily commute, whether it's to work or back, then you'll want something that's like this. Spacious and comfortable that lets you do it in ease. But that's not all you want from your car. You want it to double up as the family wagon when you go out on your weekend getaways to the farmhouse. And of course, since you're making all that money and working so hard, you want it to spell luxury. Well, if all of that's what you're looking for, then the new GLS will be one of the probables on your list. So let's get under its skin and find out what it's all about. To begin with, it's clearly a facelifted version of the 4-year-old GL. The biggest area of change is the front, with a more contoured look that's in line with the newer lot of Mercs. A more rounded grille with the twin slats, the sweeping full LED and adaptive headlamps, and a more stylized bumper and bonnet change the look a bit. It's the same at the rear with the new full LED tail lamps and reprofiled bumper. but the essence and character are still very much the same. What is really new is the nomenclature that Mercedes have now given all their new SUVs. The S meaning this is the largest in their range. But it's not only just that. At over 5 meters long, it's also the largest SUV on sale in India. Which means here on the inside, it's a really spacious and comfortable place to be. As you can see, there's loads of legroom. The tallest of people will be comfortable over here. It's nice and wide. It's airy, the cabin with the panoramic sunroof, lots of glass areas. The seat bolsters you in nice and comfortably. So the middle row definitely gets a thumbs up from me. And of course, there is the third row as well, which I'll get to when we come to a standstill. Meanwhile, the middle row offers you all you need. The 12-volt charging point, the AC controls, vents at the top, side and center to ensure that you stay cool even in the scorching heat. There's also storage space for your phones and cup holders in the armrest. The seats recline too, and you can draw the shades to get really comfortable. Cruising along like this, the GLS really keeps you comfortable and you feel like you're gliding over the road. In comfort mode, it's fine as long as you're at an easy pace, but go quicker and it tends to be a little soft and springy on uneven surfaces or undulating roads. Sport mode tethers it down a little better. At low speeds, there is a bit of stiffness and you feel sharper road imperfections more than the smaller GLE. Still, the cabin keeps you well cocooned with the suspension working away silently and the overall insulation shutting the world outside. The new GLS's cabin too has been updated, but it's not as modern as its competitors. However, quality levels are still premium and there are new elements. There's a sportier 3-spoke steering, the instruments get a more detailed digital info display, and the top portion of the center console has also been revised. An 8-inch screen takes the pride of place on the dash now. The display does show everything in high-res clarity, and what the GLS also gets is Merck's latest Command online infotainment system. The system lets you browse websites, tune into internet radio, and use preset apps by connecting via a synced phone's 3G or 4G network. You can even enter inputs via touchpad. And there's Apple CarPlay too. The center screen is also the display for the GLS's immensely useful 360-degree camera. And like others in the range, it also gets a park assist function that will find and automatically park the SUV into a suitably large spot. Now, most Indian buyers will be like me, sitting in the middle row and being chauffeured around, so maybe there'll be minimal use for that aid. However, when you do get behind the wheel, remember, parking this gargantuan mammoth is a huge task, so it will be a boon. Now, whilst I stop and take a look at the third row, you take a look at the feature list. Mercedes has also added 3-color and 5-stage adjustable ambient lighting to the package. A panoramic sunroof, electric fold for the third row of seats, and cooled or heated cup holders are some of the other features on board. Oh, and the GLS also gets dial for dynamic select that lets you choose between 5 driving modes: comfort, sport, slippery, off-road and individual, each with its own powertrain, steering and suspension setup. Well, now that we're at a standstill to check out that third row of seats like I said I would, but before I get in there, just to show you how massive the GLS actually is, look at where I'm standing. I mean, the seat is just halfway up me. It's huge. It's very high off the ground. So getting into the third row, not a single step tumble like we're used to in cars lower down the range. Still, access is easy enough. But once you're in here, what's surprising is the amount of room. For someone my size, even a long journey would be absolutely comfortable in this back seat. There's only one problem: you'll never find me sitting in the third row of a car. But that third row is surprisingly comfortable, considering that with all rows up, there still is a good amount of luggage space. And should you decide you want to take a smaller car along on the journey, I think you could fit a Nano in there with all the seats down. Jokes apart, it is truly huge. To power this mammoth is the 3-litre V6 diesel that maintains the 258 HP and 620 Nm of torque. But there's a new 9G-tronic gearbox that replaces the old 7-speed one. Now the gearbox has made a difference and the engine feels more responsive, it's overall quicker too, and for the most part it does the job well. Still, it isn't as effortless as a Q7 and you do feel like you are lugging a load around. Still, the GL is quicker by 0.7 seconds to the 100 mark, getting there in just 8.2 seconds, which is pretty respectable for something this size. Kick-down accelerations are also better than before. You can switch to sport mode to get the best out of the power plant. But the GLS is more happy cruising along. So as long as you don't push too hard, you will never lack for power. Now when you get into this car for the first time and sort of when you see it, you feel, oh my god, it's huge. How am I going to maneuver this? But even on narrower roads like this, strangely enough, I don't feel like it is so wide from behind the wheel, and I think it's the way the bonnet is shaped, it sort of draws you down to the center. So it doesn't feel imposing from behind the wheel, and what helps the feeling is the steering. Now the steering is light and easy, so it doesn't really let you feel the size of the GLS, but go around the corners and you definitely feel the size of this mammoth. It doesn't like to be hustled. So if you're looking for a sharp handling SUV, this is not it. This is an SUV more designed for comfort and leisurely driving. It does have all the electronics at hand to get over a fair bit of the rough stuff and ample ground clearance too. So taking it to the farmhouse will be a breeze as well. The GLS is just a facelift, and that shows because it doesn't feel quite as modern as the Audi Q7 or the Volvo XC90, which actually feel half a generation ahead of this car. But there's no denying it still has its strengths. Of course, there's that road presence. It's massive. There's the spacious cabin, and within that spacious cabin, it's USP, which is the comfortable third row of seats. Now, if you're a fan of the three-pointed star, there's no cause for worry because the engine now feels better. And if you're looking for a comfortable, spacious luxury SUV, the GLS still does the job.
And coming up ahead, auto news you can use on Autocar Confidential.
Hello and welcome to Autocar Confidential. Now this week we have news that Skoda, which has just launched the Superb, is planning to upgrade the suspension going forward. It will come with DCC or dynamic chassis control, which is essentially adaptive damping. Now this will be the first time any car in its class gets this sort of system, and that promises to really improve the ride and handling of the car. It's a bit on the soft side right now, but with DCC you can expect a sportier setup. Well, that's a little tidbit I have for you this week. Thanks for watching.